Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the RC Raven with Carolyne Topdjian. Now, Carolyne is a MARTY award-winning suspense writer and the author of the critically acclaimed Gothic novels The Black Moth and The Hitman's Daughter, the latter which received a starred review from the Library Journal. Shortlisted for the Ghost Prize by Fractured Literary, her work has appeared in PRISM International, Dreamers Magazine, Firewords Quarterly, and elsewhere. She's a grant recipient from the Canada Council for the Arts and the Mississauga Arts Council, holds an interdisciplinary PhD, and is a professor of fine arts at Humber Polytechnic Polytechnic in Toronto. Fittingly, she's lived in a 100-year-old haunted house for over a decade. And the links to connect with her on Instagram or Facebook is below the podcast. So welcome, Carolyne.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So, okay, tell me, you've done so many things. You're an award-winning author, professor, and artist. So how did your writing journey begin?
Great question. I have always wanted to be a novelist and just a writer, a fiction writer from a storyteller, I should say, from a very young age. I used to make all sorts of like chronic tall tales. I'm not gonna say I was a chronic liar as a kindergartner, but like I would make up all sorts of stories. Like I think and I had like an immigrant mother, so I came home from the first day of kindergarten and told her that we went swimming. Like I would just always make up stories and kind of live in a fantasy in my head of like making the world more interesting and better by telling stories. Um, and so I always knew by the time I was like in high school, I knew that this is something I like in my heart I wanted to do was create stories. And then but no one says pursue a career as a writer because there's not it's not really
Yeah.
financially stable or lucrative. So when I went to university, I started studying visual arts. Like I did a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I took an elective in creative writing, and I was so excited. And my professor, who I will not name because I have not nice things to say about him, and he's an established Canadian author, basically told me you can't write. Like your prose is awful. He told me
Oh my God.
I should stick to poetry. And like I was, 18, 19 years old, and I was like, oh, that's it. And I really didn't have like the confidence, the experience to really pursue it until I was a lot older.
Or to even speak back to defend your position. Like, what are you supposed to say? They're like this established professor, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like you're so impressionable and so I just was like, okay, and maybe he was right back then too. Like maybe my prose did suck, but I don't know, probably not the way you want to deliver that message to like a young student. But anyhow, I just sort of left it, and it was always, this dream I had, and so years later, I was like, let's get back at it.
Okay, so I mean, what did you first started writing? I mean, like
You
you
mean
went
like
to
pursue it
school.
like
Yeah,
professionally?
yeah.
Probably around, so it was when I was on maternity leave with my first son, and it was probably around, so he was born in 2010, so right around then I was like, I'm gonna write my first novel.
Hmm.
I took like, I don't know, a couple years to do that, to figure out how to write, right? Because writing a novel is its own craft and art. So it took me a couple years to figure that out. And then I started querying that. And long story short, I got my agent in 2017 with a second manuscript, like my second novel
Oh wow.
that I wrote. So my first novel that I wrote, I queried widely. It didn't get picked up, but my second one did.
Oh, okay, okay. Now you like to write Gothic suspense. Can you tell us a bit about what it is and what sort of drew you to this genre?
Yeah, I have always been from a very young age. Like I grew up like devouring Stephen King. I picked up my first Stephen King book when I was 13. I thought it said Ouija, but it was Cujo. It had really like funky font. And I thought, Ouija board, and I picked it up. And then after I bought it, I was like, oh, this is about a rabbit Saint Bernard named Cujo. Anywho, um, I was into Stephen King, Christopher Pike, R.L. Stein, like all the kind of like spooky
Mhm.
stuff. Um, and I was just always into Gothic thrillers, horrors, mysteries, but I didn't know like the genre as a name until again, much more recently when I wrote my own stuff. And then it was like, okay, how do I market this? What is this? And then I, lo and behold, discovered this whole world of Gothic literature, which is essentially suspense driven. I mean, you have your classical Gothics, think Frankenstein, Dracula, Jane Eyre is considered a Gothic. So thematically, they deal with things that include hauntings, a very, very strong sense of atmosphere and setting. Like the setting is always a character. And of course, it's named Gothic because back in the day, they were set in these like Gothic manors and castles and things. So that's like where the name derives from. Contemporary Gothics have those same themes, but they're set in, 2025 or what have you. And they often would deal with like a young heroine who, back in the day, she would faint a lot, to be honest, but she was sort of young and inexperienced and had to deal with these existential questions. And I always think that Gothics are really eerie and asking us to question like our humanity and like our sense of
Mhm.
mortality and things like that. Because you're going to deal, like, think of Frankenstein too. Like, it's all about our mortality. How do we deal with death? That's why there's lots of hauntings
Mhm.
in Gothic stories. So it's this question of like our, you know, time on Earth being limited and then what comes after. And that's like this existential crisis that every human has at some point in their life. So I think that's what sort of attracts me to the genre.
Now, do you enjoy writing more in the historical setting or contemporary setting for Gothic stuff?
I tend to do modern Gothics.
Okay.
So I tend not to dabble too much in historical stuff, although I'm certainly an avid reader of historical Gothics that are written today. But I tend to stick to contemporary settings and just make them all eerie and spooky with those same themes.
Now tell me a little bit about your 100-year-old haunted house. Like, have you seen anything in your house?
Oh, absolutely. And it inspired definitely scenes from my two published novels. So I think in a bit I'm going to do a reading, and you'll see the reading starts for The Hitman's Daughter, may debut, has all the television sets turn on in this hotel. So I did have a pesky reoccurring problem with electrical, like really uncanny electrical occurrences that would only happen at the witching hour around 3 to 4 a.m. This would happen. My television set, there was a time where I had a TV in my bedroom and it would always, in spurts of like 1 week, it would turn on at 3 a.m. And it was very jarring, very like, oh, and it was on an actual power bar, the plugs, and it was only the TV that turned on. The other things, like the lamp, didn't turn on, right? And it only ever happened at that time frame. And we would unplug it, and that was the only way to make it stop. And then it would sort of stop. And
Mhm.
then, like a few months later, it would happen again. That was one occurrence. And then we had other ones. The other one that kind of is one of the freakier stories that I tell is, so I never sleep with my phone. Like I keep it
Mhm.
downstairs, and it needs a passcode to get in. So there was a time where repeatedly my phone, again around 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., would FaceTime Sarah's, and I have more than one Sarah saved in my contacts. And like I would wake up, right? I would wake up and I have a friend, a very good friend named Sarah. Hi, Sarah, in England. And, I get this, text from her. I wake up and it says, sorry, I missed your FaceTime. Because she's in English. She's like, I'm walking my daughter to school. It would be like 9 a.m. her time. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Sarah? This is like 4 o'clock in the morning for me. I never FaceTimed you. And I look, and sure and behold, there, I've FaceTimed her. And I'm like, what the, And it happened again. I have a critique partner named Sarah. Hi, critique partner Sarah. Lovely. And she like
Wow.
we're having a meeting and she's like, "Oh, I think you like accidentally like butt dialed me the other day." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "You like it was like 3 in the morning and I got a FaceTime for you." I'm like, "What?" So there's weird things like that. And so yeah, there was
Have you
definitely
ever gone an exorcist or anything? Someone was asking me about that.
I would smudge the house. I would like do like walk around with like Christian Armenian Orthodox incense and like a smudge stick.
Yeah, because
But
recently someone
never,
was asking me about that too, because my
yeah.
parents passed away in my house, and then my friend's like, "I'm not gonna come stay with you unless you do something." I mean, I'm not gonna do it. It's my parents. Like, but anyhow, they didn't sleep the whole night apparently. So yeah,
Oh
but some
no.
people are, get very very anxious about it. But I think there's good and bad spirits, right? So.
I was about to say there's the malicious sort of upset ones, and then there's ones that are just waving hello. And I would think in my house it was the ones that were, waving hello,
Yeah,
letting you
someone
know
with a
they're there.
crush on Sarah.
They're looking for Sarah, a long lost Sarah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Now let's see. Let's talk about um Hitman's Daughter. So that was your debut? That was the
Yeah.
first book?
Yeah.
And then your
Yep.
second book is The Black Moth?
That is right. It's a duology, came out, and I just re-released them this July. They came out in brand new paperback editions. And yeah, what would you like to know about either or?
Oh, how about just a quick summary that doesn't give away too much?
Well, okay, so the first book, The Hitman's Daughter, as the title suggests, it follows the main character who is the daughter of a hitman who is incarcerated and she wants to sort of run away from that identity. And so she is under like an alias. She doesn't want people to know that that's, her about her past. She's ashamed of having a hitman having raised her. And the story takes place on New Year's Eve and through New Year's, where she is working as a shop girl in a rundown grand hotel that's reputed to be haunted. And she finds the resident artist of the hotel murdered, and then all of a sudden finds herself framed for the murder with everyone knowing that her father is a hitman. She has sort of guilt assigned to her. And she has a very unique skill set as the daughter of a hitman because she's like one of the like nicest, sweetest, most honest people, but she knows exactly how the criminal mind works thanks to her dad's upbringing or her upbringing. So yeah, it makes for a really fun protagonist. She's a very fun protagonist to write.
Now, was there any challenge to finishing any of these books?
For these two, I mean, every novel, I think I'm on my eighth and ninth novel now, and each one is a different like creative experience, I find. So I can't say I had I mean there were definitely challenges. There's always challenges when you're storytelling and coming up with like a longer project. But I didn't have trouble finishing them.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of, especially with the first book, there was a lot of rewriting. So the very first draft I did, I basically only kept the first like third of it and rewrote the second, middle and ending all over with like a whole new like villain, if you will. So a lot of reworking.
Okay. Oh, right. I forgot to ask you about the Black Moth. Is it like a sequel?
Yeah, so the Black Moth picks up, I think about 3 months after the Hitman's Daughter, that story ends. It picks up again, set in the hotel. But in this case, the protagonist, May, the Hitman's Daughter, is ends up basically blackmailed to find um, the the identity and sort of background on the ghost that's reputed to haunt the chateau. And if she doesn't, her father will be killed in prison. Like he's going to be shanked to death or what have you. So she's kind of like under the gun to do this. And at the same time, there's a big goth wedding that's booked at the hotel. So there's lots of drama. And that's the nice thing about the Gothic genre too. It's so melodramatic. It's like a soap opera. It's so yummy, like it's just I love a little bit of melodrama in my novels, so.
Okay. Now, you're also a professor. Do you teach writing or do you teach the arts?
I've taught writing before. Currently, I teach mostly in the fine arts in visual arts. So, yeah, I'm teaching an art history and sort of visual culture, things to do with more art-based and less writing, but I have in the past.
Okay. Now, what does your writing routine look like? Do you have a structured one, or are you a, what's it, pantser, plotter, I guess what they call it?
I'm naturally a pantster, but I have learned to become a plantster, I think they call it, where you do a little bit of, a little bit of plotting. My routine is I always start with a setting. I'm setting first type of person. I have to, again, with the Gothic genre too, I have to be really excited about where it's set. And when I first started writing, I was dabbling more in fantasy as well. And so I have I'm very interested in like world building, and coming up with real world fictional settings, if you will. So, the hotel that I set The Hitman's Daughter and the Black Moth in doesn't exist in real life, but it's inspired by real hotels. Um, so I start with a setting, then start developing like the kind of what if and the characters and the main character with his or her main, goal and conflict. And then once I have a rough idea, I will write out what's kind of like the book jacket pitch, right? Like the thing that you would read on the back of the book cover. And then once I have that and I'm excited, I'm like, this is something I want to read. I just start writing, and I do 1,000 words a day, every day until that first draft is done.
Okay. Now, because you write suspense, like how do you maintain the tension and the mystery throughout the story without giving away too much as continue your writing?
How do I maintain suspense? I think I need to be excited. Like, you have to really write what you want to read. So, like, if I'm excited and held in suspense, then hopefully the readers are too. And a lot of it too is just consuming suspense, right? Like, so to become a better writer, read more. So it becomes almost like intuitive, that type of buildup of tension. Again, the more you read, the more you learn sort of the rhythms of how to like draw out suspense. And a lot of us know it from watching film and TV, right? Like we have like we ourselves have I think an intuitive sense, again, depending on how much media you consume and what type, what genre. But like I think a lot of us have that sense of how suspense should be. You kind of milk it out and you feel that pressure building. And the more you do it, just the more it becomes like a second nature to you.
Okay. Now, what was one piece of advice someone gave you that was the most useful, do you think?
Um, I've had a lot of advice, sort of. You hear a lot over the years, as you're learning, and I'm a big on learning, so I'm always like looking to get advice. Um, One of the things that I think wasn't necessarily for writing per se, but advice that I got that I find very useful for writing is to make sure you're aware what measuring stick you're using to judge yourself and your own career or your own writing. So to be mindful of the measuring stick, because it's very easy when you are pursuing this professionally to have the wrong measuring stick to be evaluating your own work and your own career. So that is a great piece of advice that I turn back to a lot. Like when I feel like, uh-oh, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, what's this measuring stick? And then like, this measuring stick is garbage. Like, throw this one away. And yeah, I'll need to sort of, re change my unit of measure a little bit every now and then.
Now, are you working on anything new?
Yeah, I'm always working on something. That's the only way to sort of stay sane. It's the first time I'm doing this and I do not recommend it. I'm working on two projects at once, two novels at once. By working, I mean drafting them from scratch. Both of which I'm very excited about both projects. One is a standalone modern Gothic that I'm writing that's set in the Bernese Alps, and has to do with a hypnotherapy commune. And the second one I'm actually co-writing for the first time with two amazing writers that I feel so grateful to have connected with. And that one is a dark comedy to do with the publishing world. So hopefully, fingers crossed, more to come on those projects as they develop.
Okay, cool. All right, Carolyn, so you're doing to do a reading. Can you give us a bit of context before you start?
Sure. It would be nice to read you a couple of scenes from The Hitman's Daughter, which is set on New Year's Eve. So we're gonna basically set up the setting for The Hitman's Daughter and have our protagonist, Maeve, who's the shop girl. She has been commissioned to sit for a portrait for the resident artist named Birdie. So I'm going to read you a little bit about the setting and then just jump right into chapter one when Maeve is sort of going to approach Birdie's studio. Okay, so start with the invitation. Though the hotel was constructed in 1921, the haunting didn't occur until 70 years later. On the 4th of August, 1991, at 3:30 in the morning, every television set in each of the 439 guest rooms of the Chateau du Ciel switched on preternaturally. By this time, the hotel's revenue was already suffering from the market crash 4 years prior. Fortunately, not many guests were checked in to experience it. But those few who were, seeking a nostalgic rendezvous or unparalleled privacy, would tell you the same story. They awoke to the sounds of their televisions blaring and an infant crying. The former nuisance they would shut off with a click of the remote, but the latter would prove difficult to pin down or drown out. Was it coming from next door, upstairs, the corridor? After a few noise complaints to the front desk, the guests would eventually drift back into a troubled sleep. And with bags under their eyes and a sour taste on their tongues, all would check out hours later. Some would moan they felt ill from acute heartburn or intense migraines. Others would claim they arose in the morning with streaks of white in their hair or spiders crawling in their bed sheets. They'd blame the chateau, its poor wiring, its dusty vents and acidic wine selection. A handful would demand refunds and threaten never to step foot inside the hotel again. And for a little while, that was the case. The chateau in all its grandeur fell into ruin. The era was forgotten. So was the mysterious baby, until the invitations arrived in the post. The season has come for an unforgettable celebration. Ring in the new year in opulence at our Centennial Diamond Ball. Black and white attire, champagne cocktails, 8-course dinner, dancing, orchestra. Chateau du Ciel, soar in luxury, remain forever. Maeve exited the elevator onto the 23rd floor. Scalloped shells, on the wallpaper, on the carpeting, on the lumpy wingback oil paintings and deco tile work. Each level of the hotel had a design motif, and this one, it would seem, was regurgitated cockles and clams. Might explain why it remains eerily unoccupied, a front by sea life. That and Birdie's reputation for harassing any temporary neighbors. Rumor had it the artist had bought the entire penthouse floor in the early 80s. Maeve referenced the wall signage for directions and turned down a long, empty corridor. Despite more than one tour from the concierge bastion, this enormous hotel remained a labyrinth. Left turn, another right turn. Built by a French investor during the Roaring Twenties. Over 600,000 square feet of regal opulence nestled in nature, Bastian had recited from the website. 439 guest rooms recognized for hosting numerous international celebrities, industry moguls, and diplomats since the chateau first opened its doors. That was before its decline, before its ornate railings crept with rust and its crown moldings chipped and splintered. Now the hotel was lucky its annual hunters gathering, its only grace from bankruptcy, attracted a low-maintenance crowd each September. According to Bastian, the outdoorsmen didn't give a shit about tarnished silver or cracked plaster. Their only requirements were soft beds, cold beers, and accommodations for their portable meat lockers. Halfway to her destination, Maeve's confidence faltered as the wall sconces flickered and dimmed. Their buzz of electricity filled the hall like a hymn of wasps. She hugged her arms tight across her middle, fighting a chill, and picked up her pace. Likely the ice storm was damaging more than just the cell towers this evening. By the time she reached the double doors of Bertie's studio, her imagination had declared a state of winter apocalypse outside. Maeve knocked briskly. "Bertie?" She neared her lips to the seam between the doors. "It's Maeve Michael. I got your note." Did the old woman change her mind about the portrait? Maeve tried not to think of her meager life savings. Someday she'd own more than a traveling toothbrush in a transient's room. She'd live in a permanent home that she'd decorate with bright lights, fresh peonies, and fairy lights. She raised her fist to knock again when a faint response came. "Come in." Maeve waited a beat, turned the knob, and found it unlocked. Like every other room in the chateau, this one announced her entrance with a crackle and creak. 2 steps into the dark studio, and rather than calm her jitters, Bertie's cluttered space heightened them. Burnt spotlights hung haphazardly from the ceiling. A naked mannequin stood facing the corner like a shamed youth suffering punishment. Canvases of various sizes, mainly incomplete portraits, were piled against the drawn velour curtains, shoved against easels, work tables. Maeve shuddered under the portrait's collective stare and did her best not to trip over anything. The floor was littered with wrinkled tubes of paint, rags, plastic bags, ripped sketches. "Hello?" Sleep pattered the window panes. An illusion of skeletal children tapping their fingertips on glass harassed her logic. "Yoo-hoo, I'm here," Maeve called. As she wandered deeper into the artist's studio, another sound, a cough, floated through the wall. She bumped a mason jar with her foot, and a mysterious inky mixture spilled and stained the rug black. Not that anyone would notice. It was a miracle Bertie could find a brush, much less complete a painting in this chaos. "Maeve, Mike!" Her attention snapped to the call. Bertie's cry traveled from the connecting room. "No!" A thud. The brassy ring of a rotary telephone cut short. Maeve's blood spiked with adrenaline. Uncaring of her steps, she scurried through the wet stain and thrust open the door to a drafty, unlit sitting room. The place was narrow and deep. "Bertie, where are you?" How many rooms within rooms were there in this suite? "Bertie!" "Always case out a joint before entering," her father's voice warned in her head. "Know your weapons, your exits." Rubbing her biceps to keep warm, Maeve squinted into the darkness and conducted a mental inventory. Tall stacks of hoarded magazines, tufted couch, trunk box, standing vase. She flinched at the sight of a girl with hunched shoulders across the room, then exhaled. Her reflection in the facing mirror copied her actions. "Focus," she chided herself. "Your birthday's making you melodramatic. You need this money. Find Bertie." Next to the couch, a paneled door was cracked ajar. As she hurried toward it, her heel caught and raked something soft, a fallen wig. A sense of urgency goading her, she carried on and entered into a sub-zero bedroom. Movement stirred in the corner of her eye, a figure in black. Breath caught. Maeve spun and saw no one, her eyes playing tricks again. The heavy curtains ballooned and billowed. Grains of ice resembling coarse salt blew over the carpet. Maeve shivered and huddled. In her haste to shut the balcony doors, she didn't notice Bertie, not until she tripped over the old woman's ankles and into a pool of blood.
Boy, that sounded very suspenseful there. Ah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Carolyne, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.